upbeat, intriguing music starts and fades slightly.
It's one of the biggest questions out there, right? How does a mind even begin? I mean, we usually think of intelligence as, solving tough problems or writing poetry, but where does all that start? What's that very first spark? Well, to figure that out, we've got to go all the way back to the beginning. And to find our answer, we're going to look at the work of a real titan in psychology, Jean Piaget. See, in his incredible 1952 book, The Origins of Intelligence in Children, he did something really special. He didn't just sit in an office and cook up theories. Nope, he watched. He carefully, meticulously observed babies, including his own kids, to figure out how a mind is actually built. So, the first thing Piaget does is pretty radical. He completely flips the script on what we think intelligence is. He's like, look, it's not some magical, abstract thing that just pops into existence. For him, it's way more fundamental. It's a biological tool. Just like breathing or digestion, it's about survival.
And, Piaget's own words from the book's intro really nail it. He says intelligence is an adaptation. Think about that. Just like our bodies adapt to the physical world, our minds have to adapt to make sense of everything around us. It's this constant search for balance, an equilibrium with the environment. And this biological idea, well, it's the key to his whole way of thinking.
Okay, so if intelligence is all about adapting, the big question is how? How does it actually work? Well, Piaget came up with this brilliant, really elegant idea. He said there's an engine inside the mind with two main gears that drive all mental growth. And I mean from day one all the way through our entire lives.
So, that first gear is called assimilation. Basically, this is when we encounter something new and we try to squeeze it into the mental boxes we already have. It's like the mind is trying to make reality fit its existing rules. Imagine you only have a hammer and you start seeing everything as a nail. You're assimilating the world into your hammer framework.
But what happens when you run into a screw? Your hammer isn't going to work, right? That's where the second gear, accommodation, kicks in. This is when we're forced to change our mental boxes, to adjust our thinking, to deal with the new thing. It's reality forcing the mind to change. We have to put down the hammer and invent a screwdriver.
And this is where it gets really cool. Piaget actually shows how these two super simple biological ideas, assimilation and accommodation, are the foundation for our most complex, high-level thoughts. So if you look at this chart, on the left you've got the basic biological stuff, and on the right you've got the big ideas they build up to, like how we understand cause and effect or space. He's literally mapping how we get from biology to philosophy, all powered by these two processes.
So the big takeaway here is that learning isn't a one-way street. It's this constant dynamic dance between assimilation and accommodation. We're always taking things in and trying to make them fit, and then changing our minds when they don't. That dance, that's intelligence. That's adaptation in action.
All right, so let's go see this engine fire up for the very first time. Where does it all begin? Piaget traced it back to the most basic automatic things a baby can do. It's reflexes.
And he zooms in on one thing that every single one of us did without even thinking about it: sucking. It seems so simple, right? Kind of mindless. But to Piaget, this was it. This was the tiny seed from which the giant tree of intelligence would grow.
And this quote right here shows you exactly how he worked. He wasn't in some fancy lab with a bunch of equipment. He was just watching. And in his very first observation, he sees that right from birth, if a baby's hand just happens to brush against its lips, bam, the sucking reflex kicks in.
But here's the kicker, the really important insight. He realized this reflex isn't just a simple on-off switch. The more the baby uses it, the better it gets. It becomes more organized, more efficient. The baby is literally practicing. And that right there is the very first, most basic form of learning.
He actually breaks this down into three kinds of assimilation happening at once. First is what he calls functional assimilation. That just means practice makes perfect. The reflex gets stronger with use. Then there's generalizing assimilation. This is when the baby starts trying to suck on everything, not just the nipple. And finally, recognitory assimilation. The baby starts to figure out, hey, this thing is food and this other thing is not.
And here's Piaget describing the generalizing stage himself. The baby is sucking its fingers, blankets, toys, everything. It's taking all these different objects and assimilating them into the one big idea it has about the world, the sucking idea. It's literally exploring its entire universe with its mouth. Okay, so intelligence starts as an automatic reflex, but where does it go from there? How does a baby go from just reacting to, well, doing something on purpose? That brings us to stage 2, where we see the very first habits being formed. Piaget had a fancy name for this: primary circular reactions. I know, it sounds super academic, but the idea is actually really simple. Picture this: a baby accidentally gets its thumb in its mouth. It feels good. It's interesting. So what does it do? It tries to do it again, and again, and again. It's a loop, a circular reaction.
And you have to understand, this is a massive leap forward. A reflex is just an automatic program, right? It just runs. But a habit, this circular reaction, is something totally new. It's a learned skill. The baby isn't just a passenger anymore. It's starting to grab the steering wheel.
And you can see this happening in real time in his notes about his son Laurent. The thumb-sucking stops being a random accident. It becomes systematic. He's practicing. He's even developing a preference for his right thumb over his left. He's building a real habit, one that he is in control.
This is the moment right here where the infant really becomes an active player in its own development. It starts connecting things, linking what it sees with what it can touch and taste. It's like the different parts of the machine are finally starting to talk to each other.
So, okay, we've looked at these tiny first steps, from a simple reflex to the very first habit. What's the big idea here? What's the main takeaway from all of Piaget's incredible detective work?
It all comes down to this: intelligence isn't something a baby has, it's something it builds. It's not a gift you're just handed at birth, like the color of your eyes. It's something you actively construct. From the second they're born, a baby is a builder, using every interaction with the world as a brick to build its own mind. So let's do a quick rundown of what we've seen. For Piaget, intelligence is all about adaptation to the world. That adaptation happens through that constant dance between assimilation and accommodation. It all kicks off with simple reflexes, which then, through practice, turn into real intentional habits. And the most important thing to remember? The mind is constructed brick by brick from the ground up.
And that leaves us with one last kind of mind-bending question. See, according to Piaget, this whole process, this dance of assimilating and accommodating, it never actually stops. We're all still doing it every single day of our lives. We're all still building. So it makes you wonder, doesn't it? What are the bricks you're laying down today?